John cooked 124 hot dogs for a company picnic. Each person was served at most 2 hot dogs. Which inequality represents the number of people, P, who were served hot dogs? Well, the key phrase, at most, tells me less than or equal to. So not everybody got 2 hot dogs, but the most hot dogs they could have gotten were 2. So that means that I take the 124 and I'm going to divide that by 2 and I get 62. So I can eliminate A and B. Then I'm looking at the rest of them. So it says the number of people is less than 62, or the number of people is less than or equal to 62. Okay, so I know that at most they were served 2 hot dogs. So even if every single person got 2 hot dogs, 62 would be the number I would have. So I'm going to say D, because that could include the if everybody got 2 hot dogs. Question 2. Glen Middle School needs at least 65 volunteers. So at least tells me that's the lowest number. They could use more than that. They're saying at least. So that means the lowest number they could have was 65. So that means I'm going to eliminate C and D, because that shows less than. The arrow's going to the left, telling me that's less than. At least means that it could include the 65. 65 is the lowest number that will work. So that means if I'm going to include it, I have to say A, because A has a closed dot, and that includes the 65. Question 3. Which graph represents the solution to x is less than 4? Now, less than is going to have an open dot. So the first thing I would do is eliminate any that don't have an open dot. So I'm looking, they all have open dots, so that didn't really work. The next thing I need to look for is the 4. So it's got to be a positive 4, so I can eliminate A and B because they're both negative 4. Now, when I had a student teacher many years ago, they showed my class that this acts as an arrow. So x is less than 4. So less than, so that would be 3, 2, 1, and 0. Pardon me. Pardon me. So it would be C. D would be x is greater than 4. Question 4. Which point is negative 7, 8? So I'm going to zoom in on my graph. I start at the origin, which is 0, 0, and I'm going to go over to negative 7. Then I have to go down negative 8. So I count the jumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So point R is located at negative 7, negative 8. Which quadrant contains the points negative 4.5 and 3? So when I draw out my coordinate plane, I know this direction is positive, this direction is negative. I know if I go up, I'm going positive. If I go down, I'm negative. So that also tells me what my coordinate pairs are going to look like. So quadrant 1 is positive, positive. And that's quadrant 1. Quadrant 2 is going to be x comes first, so it's negative, positive. Quadrant 3 is going to be negative, negative. And then quadrant 4, remember x comes first, so it's going to be positive, negative. Because my x side to side always goes first. And this is quadrant 4. So when I look at my point, I have a negative and then a positive number. So a negative positive would be quadrant 2. All right, point P has a negative x and a positive y. So again, I'm going to draw out my quadrants. I know if I go that way, I'm positive. This way, I'm negative. If I go up, I'm positive. If I go down, I'm negative. Then I look at each of my quadrants. So this is 1, and I kind of go in a backwards. 3, 4. Then I use my X first, so side to side first. So it's positive, positive is quadrant 1. Quadrant 2, I got to go X first, so negative. My Y would be positive. My horizontal in this one would be negative, and my vertical would be negative. And then I would go, remember, side to side first, so positive, negative. So when I look, I have a negative X, so a negative X, and a positive Y. So again, this would be 2. All right, for this one it says, what is the length of line segment DJ? So it's really important that you don't get mixed up and accidentally find D to K. So I know I'm trying to get from -8 to +4 in the X. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's 12 units. Distance is always positive. So my answer should have been C. All right. The next one, it says, which of the following coordinates lie on the triangle graphed below? So on it, so it means has to land on a line segment. So my first point is -4, 2. So I go over to -4 and I go up to 2. That's on the line segment. So I think it's A, but I'm going to check the other ones. So I'm going to change colors. So I have -1 and then +3. So that's inside my triangle, so that's out. So the next one, I'm going to change colors again to -1. So +2, -1. That's not even anywhere near the triangle. All right, and then 0, -7. I'm going to switch colors one more time. So 0, I start at the origin, it doesn't. -7, that's nowhere near the triangle. So D's out, so my answer should have been A. Question 9. At 6 a.m., the temperature was -3, and by 9 a.m., the temperature had dropped 5 degrees. So I'm at -3, and then it drops 5 degrees. Which expression represents the temperature at 9 a.m.? So by dropping, I'm subtracting, so that would be A. But I also could have said -3 plus a -5, because the -5 there would have shown the drop. Question 10. An investment company lost $975. So that would be a -975. The following day, the company gained. Gained would be a positive number, 435. So I'm going to look and see which are my options. So I have, they want to know what could be used to find the total change over these 2 days. Well, I want to know the total change. So it would be B. Question 11. The picture below shows positive and negative charges. Which integer represents the total value? So when you guys did your IXL for integers, you looked at 0 pairs. So a positive and a negative number make a 0 pair. So when you have a positive and a negative, they cancel each other out, creating a 0 pair. So that's 2 0 pairs, 3 0 pairs, 4 0 pairs. So I'm left with 4 chips left, and they are all negative. So my answer is -4. Question number 13. Jordan must keep at least, so it's important to see that word, at least $25 in her savings account to avoid a service charge. So at least means that's the minimum. They have to keep that much in there. So that's telling me that it's a closed dot, that it includes the 25. So that means I'm going to eliminate C and I'm going to eliminate A because that doesn't include the 25. So at least, so that's the lowest amount possible. She could have more, but she can't have less. So D shows amounts that are less than 25. So D is out, so it has to be B. At least means greater than or equal to. Sophia can spend at most, so that's the important thing to have, at most $50 on clothes. If X is the amount of money she can spend on clothes, which inequality represents that situation? So I'm just going to draw myself a quick number line. Put 50 on there, put 0, put 100. So at most, so that means that includes the 50. At most. So at most, that's the most she can spend. So she could spend less than that. She just can't spend more. So I'm going to be going in this direction. So I know that I have to have X is less than, because that's the direction of the arrow, or equal to, because it's a closed dot, 50. Remember that your inequality almost serves as an arrow. So that means that my answer would be B. A class needs at least, so that's my key word, at least 65 sandwiches for a picnic. Which inequality represents the number of sandwiches and the class needs for the picnic? So at least, so if I was going to draw myself an arrow, I've got 65, I'm just going to put 100 on here, and I'm going to put 0. So at least, so that means it includes the number because that's the lowest number possible. So I'm going to put a closed dot. At least 65 sandwiches. So that's the lowest number of sandwiches you can have. That means you could have more, you can't have less. So I'm going in this direction. So that means N has to be greater than or equal to, because it's a closed dot, 65. Remember, your inequality works as an arrow. It's kind of like a cheat. So you should have had C as your answer. Holtville, California has an altitude of 10 feet below sea level. So below sea level is a negative number. New Orleans has an altitude of 7 feet below sea level. So then they want to know which inequality correctly compares the altitudes. Well, I know it can't be A or B because they don't have negative numbers. So now I'm looking at C or D. So when I'm thinking about a number line, I know I have 0, and then I go -1, -2, -3. The further to the right it is, the bigger it is. So that means my inequality goes that way. -10 is less than -7. So my answer should be D. Now you're going to go ahead and get on and do your IXL objective for this lesson. Make sure you export it as a PDF. So that means you're going to hit these 3 buttons, hit export, and then put it in as a PDF.